Welcome, everyone, to the GrowLeader podcast, where we grow leaders that grow churches by helping them reach their full potential. My name's Matt, and I'm so glad you're here with us. Hey, don't forget that all of the information you're looking for about GrowLeader can be found by a quick visit over to GrowLeader.com. You'll find information about upcoming events like our one-day regional conferences. You can access completely free resources for your church, and you'll learn how you can be a part of our monthly mentoring calls with Pastor Chris Hodges. GrowLeader.com is also the place where you will find all of the show notes for everything you'll hear in the episode today. Now, before we get started, we want to give a big shout out to the partners that help make the GrowLeader podcast happen each and every month. The first is Compassion International. Compassion International has been working to serve the world's most vulnerable children in the name of Jesus for over 70 years. They've helped over 2.2 million children, and they reach and serve every child and family through the power of the local church. To learn more about Compassion International, visit them at compassion.com. We also want to say thank you to Great American Family. Great American Family is America's premier TV destination for high-quality family programming. Great American Family is a part of the Great American Media portfolio of brands and is carried through all major cable providers. To find out where you can see their content, go over to greatamericanfamily.com to get more information. And finally, we want to say a big thank you to the Wesleyan Investment Foundation. For over 80 years, WIF has been helping churches and church planners with their borrowing and investing needs. Now, maybe you're a pastor listening right now and you're dreaming about a brand new project or opportunity, or you might be at a place as an organization where you're trying to decide how to wisely invest and steward the resources you currently have. We really think WIF can help you, and you can learn more about them at wifonline.com. Today's episode is a fantastic conversation between Pastor Chris and a great friend of GrowLeader, Dr. John Maxwell, about how we can all grow as communicators. Let's jump in and join them now.
Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this bonus content of the GrowLeader podcast, where we grow leaders that grow churches by helping them reach their full potential. And I'm so delighted about today's episode because one of our commitments as an organization, this GrowLeader organization, is to resource you and to help you with the tools that you need to grow your churches. And I can't think of a better tool that all of us need because it comes around 52 times a year, and that is our communication. And today, I have the mentor of all mentors, my dear, dear friend, John Maxwell, with me today on the podcast to really unpack a book that he just released that I am so excited about. Now, I like all of his books, obviously. I mean, I'm a John Maxwell fan in every way. And if you want to know what my favorite book is, it's Today Matters. That's my favorite. But I mean, he's written 80 plus books and they're all good. But I promise you, I don't think there's one that is serving pastors better than this one, because this is something we do at least 52 times a year on a Sunday. And that is on the topic of communication. And when you think about how we share our vision and how we raise money and as we talk to people who are far from God, I mean, this topic is so incredibly important. And I know it's an area where every single one of us can actually grow our skill set here. This is a craft that can be developed, and we have now one of the greatest tools ever in this latest book that John's written called The 16 Laws of Communication. I was recently in a pastor's roundtable, where John spent 6 hours with us unpacking this book. And man, there is so much meat in it, which, by the way, we have roundtables like that you can attend at GrowLeader as well. And we'd love for you to sign up at the many different resources and functions and events that we have. But today, for the next 25 minutes, you are going to learn, you're going to grow. I want you to get your pencil out, iPad out, your pen, take some notes on your phone, whatever, and I want us to all grow. John, thank you so much for joining me today on this episode.
Oh, how much fun, Chris. Love being with you. I love being with you doing anything, but to do a podcast for church leaders today on a subject that's so important like communication, I'm reminded Warren Buffett said that it's the most important skill to learn. I mean, this great financial guru said, before you learn the finances, you got to learn how to communicate. And the reason he said that is because what do leaders do? They have to cast vision all the time. They're constantly communicating thoughts, ideas, direction. And if we communicate better, we're just going to be more effective in getting the return that we want out of life. So
I believe that so much, and I do think it's probably the most important skill to possess as a leader, and especially as a pastor leader, because that's what we do. We communicate. You've broken this book out into 5 sections. We obviously can't cover all 16 laws, but talk about the 5 sections of the book first, that kind of the headings of the different aspects of communication. And then I want us to tackle a few laws. I actually have 3 specifically that I want you to address, because when you shared it with all the other pastors a few weeks ago, I thought they were spectacular. All of them were, but these really touched me. But talk about these sections first.
Well, this is the only laws book. I've written 4, Chris. Written one on leadership, teamwork, personal growth, and then this one. But this is the only one where I divided the laws up. But I felt that in communication, that there really are 5 unique essentials for a person to be a good communicator. And so I thought I better spell them out and put the appropriate laws under each section. For example, who says it? That's huge in communication. I mean, there are some people that, remember the old E.F. Hutton, commercial when E.F. Hutton speaks, everybody gets quiet, everybody listens. Well, who says it really packs a lot in what the communication and how effective it's going to be. And then what is said, that's a lot about what the content's going to be. How it is said, that's the spirit of the communicator.
Which, by the way, that's the one that's really, as I've read the book, has actually added so much value to me. 40 years into ministry, it's just I'm still learning, how to say it.
Well, it's like one person said, I went to hear 2 sermons on hell. And one of the preachers, when he preached, kind of wanted us to go there, and the other one wanted to keep us from going there.
Exactly.
And it's the same subject, but a total different attitude about hell or about any subject. And then when it is said, timing. We all understand the power of timing and communication. There's a right time to say something. There's a time when you hold back. And then, of course, why it is said, which is the motive. Why am I teaching this truth? And what is there something that am I doing something for myself out of this communication, or am I just trying to help the people? So those are the 5, what I call the essentials of communication. And I broke it down because this is such an important subject. I felt that each essential deserved some laws under it that would help a person get better at that essential, whatever it is. And so, like how it is said was something that spoke to you. And I think that when a person begins to read the book and begins to see how it's broken up in those 5 categories, it'll just make the laws a little bit more meaningful to them, because I have put them contextually where they belong, I hope.
You have. And let's start with that first section, who says it. And I want you to start with that very first one, the law of credibility, because I think this is so huge. I think anyway, and you've heard me speak, John, maybe you can even speak to this, but I think there's a believability about how I communicate that people like. So I try not to talk down to people, and I've always had a goal to make people feel like, look, I don't even know if I agree with him, but I think he believes it, and he seems real to me, and he seems like, he's talking to me like he would be talking to me if we were sitting down for coffee. And I think this whole law of credibility is important. Unpack this one for us today.
Well, I'm glad to. When I started off as a preacher, I preached other people's messages, and I don't think that's a bad thing, because I didn't have any good ones. So I always tell people, listen, if you're not don't have a good message, go get somebody else's. Okay? I mean, I used to laugh and joke, and this is history because I'm old, but I used to say, when Chuck Swindoll preaches better messages, so will I. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so I think all pastors have gotten messages from others or ideas. We all do, and we still do that. I don't think there's nothing wrong with that. But I made a decision when I wrote these laws. What's beautiful about every law I wrote, I could go back and personally have a testimonial of when that law changed my life and turned me in the right direction. And that's what I think makes these laws powerful. They'll turn you in the right direction. And I can and this one, I was 23. I was just in my 2nd year pastoring. And I grew up in a holiness tradition, and there were certain messages that I was expected to preach that I really didn't believe. I never, could I preach those messages? Of course I could preach those messages. Did I know the wording for those messages? Of course I did. But in my heart of hearts, what I'm about to preach hadn't changed my life, hadn't affected my life. And I remember so well, Chris, I came to a conclusion at 23 that I would only preach what I have personally not only believed, but I live it. And if I don't live it, and if I don't believe it, I'm just not going to preach it. And I remember for a couple of years bringing in a couple guest speakers to my church and let them preach messages that I really couldn't preach to the people, but I felt that they could. I felt they were authentic in it, and I let them do that. And that really changed my life as far as it allowed me to, here's what happens. Authenticity gives you conviction. You said it, Chris. If I'm hearing somebody that I don't even agree with them, I mean, they may be saying something I just think I don't buy into that at all. But if they buy into it, it speaks to my heart. And I don't think that we should pass on to our people anything that we haven't found out to be true in our own life. And so in preparing my messages, Chris, before I ever preach it, I go through the message very carefully, point by point. And I just say, John, is this you? Are you living this? Can you look at people with integrity and say, this works in my life? And you know, so many times we try to pass on to others what hasn't truly changed our own life. And so I think the power, the anointing, I think the conviction, all comes out of this sense of just being credible, having an authenticity about who we are and what we believe. And I think that's contagious. When you catch a message, you didn't catch a message off of content. You learned a message off of content. You caught a message off of credibility.
That's so good.
And the catching part, it was like I say at mentoring, Chris, who mentors you is as important as what they say.
Wow.
And the contagiousness of the who and the credibility and the authenticity really carries a lot of weight in this law.
Talk a little bit about content, though. You know, because you are very authentic and you're very believable, but you're also very prepared, and you have your lists have lists. I mean, you in fact, probably the question that got asked the most by these pastors at this roundtable you and I did was, talk to us about your preparation time. Kind of unpack preparation, content, how you do it, when you do it. Because these guys, I mean, the pastors that are listening to us and the business leaders that are listening to us, they've already given the speech that they've given. Now 6 days from now, we have another one. You know, it's time to do it again. So there has to be something that really kind of continually fills this well of content. Talk a little bit about that for us.
Yeah, when I was pastoring, it always seems like there was Sunday, Monday, Wednesday, Saturday, and Sunday. And I just thought, where did the other days go? It just, you know, I knew there were 7, but it seemed like about 4. It just, you know, it comes so fast. And I think one of the frustrations of a pastor is in a very short time, you have to develop content. And one of the things, two things. The first thing I want to talk about is going back to this law. It marked my life. Again, every law marked my life. And I can remember, again, as a young pastor in my first church, a little community, farming community, these farmers were so content. Literally, if I just got up and read John 3:16, they were pleased. They were just beautiful, precious, simple, loving people. And I found out very quickly that I could wing it and get by with it. That in other words, I could, you know, I don't know, put a scripture, get a couple stories, get a couple thoughts, get up and preach, and those people would be very happy with me. I mean, it wouldn't be like, we got to get another pastor. And what happens is, winging it becomes a huge temptation when you know you can get by with it.
Wow.
There's no temptation of winging it if you think you're going to get caught. But the moment you think, I can get by with this, and what happens is, if you're naturally gifted in an area, you can wing it. And so what people that are naturally gifted, I mean, you're naturally gifted in leadership. I don't mean this unkindly. You can wing it. But I had to ask myself, am I going to wing it or am I going to work for it? And they're just as opposite as can be. Winging it means I do as little as possible to get by, and working for it means I do as much possible so that I can go to a whole different level. And that was life-changing for me in preparation. Another thing, there's so much to talk about in preparation, but another thing, Chris, is I'm always preparing. I don't like on Monday say, okay, now what do I prepare for Sunday? I'm always reading, I'm always filing, I'm always writing. And so I'm preparing something that I may never not even preach for a year or two, but I'll read it and I'll say this is really good, and I'll file it, and there's a day when I'll go back and I'll get it. But you have to file it. If the number one time waster is looking for things that are lost. So I say every day I'm preparing, but be honest with you, I'm not preparing sometimes a specific message, but I'm preparing content for a day when that specific. Some people, they find the subject and then they go prepare. I prepare and then find the subject. It's a total different world, but it really works for me. But I think God honors a heart that is always preparing, because this makes me greatly dependent upon God and expectant of Him speaking to my heart and talking to my heart, and knowing that what I have filed over here that I won't use this Sunday, but I filed it, that there's a day when it's going to be pulled out, it's going to be used by God. And so I think preparation is a way of life. And just one more thing. I think when you prepare, you show you care.
Wow.
And I think when people don't prepare, I don't think they care. I don't think they care about the people they're delivering the message to. I don't think they care about their own personal development and growth in their life. And so you know what it tells me? When somebody prepares, it tells me that person values me as a person.
That's right.
They cared enough for me and valued enough for me that they said, I'm going to give you my best. Now we know Sunday to Sunday is short content time. So every Sunday I preached, I always felt when I was done that I could have done a better job. I couldn't get that deep satisfaction because I didn't have the time to do it the way I felt it deserved to be done. But I did my best, and I gave it my best shot. But I never felt like when I was done, like, oh, that was huge. But people deserve my best because they're people that God values or people I value.
You taught me this. You've been mentoring me for 20 years now, and you taught me how to everyday read, everyday study, everyday file. I wasn't doing that, and now I do it literally every day. I mean, I will find something, file something, and of course, the secret to filing is putting it in a place where you can find it. So I've developed this very sophisticated kind of filing system, and I can put my hands on something in a second. And you taught me that, and I want to thank you for that. But this is very, very important. People ask me all the time, how do I prepare for messages? I'm preparing for the messages I'll preach in the fall. I'm preparing for the messages I'll preach in the summer. Of course,
Never
for me,
stops.
Yeah, for me, it's important to know kind of where I'm going, even if I don't know when I'm going to preach it. I know there's a relationship series coming up again. I know Christmas is coming up again. I know. So anytime something along those lines comes by, I'll grab it, file it, and the metaphor I use, John, I don't know if I've ever told you this. I liken it to going shopping and filling a pantry. So my pantry has more food items in it than I'm going to cook that day. But the best thing in the world is to be able to, when you want to cook a meal, to not have to go to the store. It's already in my pantry somewhere.
Mark Cole's in the studio. Get the pantry idea. I don't have that one.
Isn't that a great thought?
But that's exactly what preparing is. You're putting food in the pantry. You may not use that for a couple weeks, but it's there. Hey, you don't one day say, I want to make this, and then say, have a pantry that's bare.
Exactly.
Or I use the same analogy with the well. Fill the well with water. So when you go get you a bucket of water, you got to have it full. I never heard you do the pantry. I love that.
Well, thank you.
That is worth stealing. That's worth writing. And you can buy that book in a few years whenever it comes out.
And you'll give me credit, but not royalties. I know the line.
My mentoring is paying off.
It is. All right, let's keep moving because I want to get to my favorite section, and that is the one on how it is said. And I want you to talk a little bit about the law of connection. You are the best connector of people I've ever met in my entire life. Seriously, John, you are the most present. I watch you all the time in rooms full of people, and it never feels like a room full of people. You connect in one-on-one. You connect on a stage. You, in my opinion, you're the best in the world at it. Teach us, oh Jedi Master. Teach us, please.
Thank you. Those are pretty big words coming from
I
you,
mean
my
it,
friend.
though. It's
Yeah,
true.
thank you. Well, okay. I did a little webinar on this book that is evergreen that people can watch, and when I sat down with the people that were putting it together, I said I want to start the webinar not on stage. I want to start it in the audience, and so the first part of the webinar, I'm out where the audience is, and I'm saying all great communicators and all great connectors, they don't start on the stage. They start where the people sit. Because if I'm going to connect with you or with anyone else, I have got to very quickly understand where you are and how I can help you. It is all about you, Chris, and it's not about me. And so I talked to them on this webinar just briefly about the fact that the first thing I think about is the people. I was getting ready to speak at a large convention, and there were several speaking. I was in the green room, and one of the other speakers came up to me about 5 minutes before I started, and he said, "Well, what are you thinking about?" And I said, "Well, I'm thinking about the people." I said, "You're kidding me." He said, "I thought you would be thinking about your lesson." I said, "No, I know what I'm going to teach." I said, "I'm thinking about the people because it doesn't matter what I'm teaching if I don't connect with the people." And so I think connecting with people is the key to great successful communicators. That's why you can look at great communicators, Chris, that have total different personalities, total different technique in the way they teach, and they all have one thing in common. It is as they are talking directly to you. It's like you said, he's read my mail and he knows exactly where I am. So I talk in the book about first impressions and the very fact that as soon as you walk out and start teaching, the people are already evaluating you, not only by what you say, but your mannerisms. And for me, this isn't for everybody. I got my stool, I got my table, and I sit down and, "Hi, my name is John. I'm your friend." Now I do that for a very specific reason, and that is people look at me as highly successful, and I have to close the gap immediately. Hey, Jim Nance, Jim Nance, the greatest sportscaster maybe ever. Hello, friends. Hello,
Yeah.
friends. I mean, all you got to do is watch Nance. Just go listen to one of it. NCAA, the Masters. Just he understands personal connection. But the key to personal connection, and when I had my breakthrough. By the way, let me just say this: in the beginning, I was not a connector. I was a speaker. If you would have seen me in my first few years of preaching, I don't think you would have ever looked at it and said, "Man, this guy's going to be a pretty big connector in life and communicator." I think you would have said, I think you would have said this. I think you would have said, "He's good, but he's not great." But I can still remember when I realized that the problem that kept me from connecting with others was me. That I was wanting it to be more about me than about the people. And so the moment it's about me, now all of a sudden I'm saying, "I hope they like me. I hope that was a good point." And I'm focused on me. And you have to get over yourself. It's like this. You have to get over yourself to give yourself to others. You can't give yourself to other people if you're still thinking about you. So people say, "Well, how do you get present at the moment?" Well, it's very simple. Who am I with right now? Whoever I'm with, it's all about them. It's all about them. And I watch people who have great things to say, but they're saying it for other reasons than the fact that they want to make a difference in a person's life. And you can tell that. You can
Yeah.
you can just tell that. So I'm going to sit down. "Hi, my name's John. I'm your friend." And then there's connecting is all on common ground. And what's interesting is it's the communicator's job to go find the common ground where the people are.
Right.
So I remember I had a hard time traveling internationally, and because you speak overseas a lot. It's very difficult. Communicating overseas, a lot of times, is not any fun at all because they don't understand the culture, humor that we do, and so it's hard work. I remember the breakthrough day when I was trying so desperately to connect with the audience. And I was going to speak on something, but I wasn't sure they would understand contextually what it was. Let's say like I was going to talk about maybe giving your children allowance for chores. And I looked at them and I said, let me ask you a question. Do you give your children an allowance for chores for doing work around the house? And immediately they start responding, yeah, we do that. Okay, then let me teach this. And all of a sudden, what I discovered was the moment I asked the question of the people,
That's good.
I empowered them. They gave me the answer, and guess what? Now they can hardly wait to hear me. I put the power in their hands. And there's something really beautiful about people first, taking care of them where they are. Chris, you're a great golfer. I'm an average golfer. But one of the things I do every time you notice on a golf course, while they're putting, what am I doing? I'm picking up everybody else's club. I'm picking up their stuff.
It's true.
And as we walk off, here's your club. Here's your club. Now I don't have to do that. I'm not the caddy. I can stand and watch everybody else putt and walk off with my own club. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with that. But after about 5 or 6 holes, I've sent a message to that person. Sent a message that I'd like to serve you.
It's very true.
And it's my joy to add value to you, and I value you as a person. And it's a spirit, it's an attitude, it's a focus that once you find somebody that connects with you, you own them. They're yours now. They're yours now. And then you can move on, but you got to find that common ground, and that's so key. So I try to be vulnerable. I try to be open. I try to, I make fun of myself. Anything I can do to take that gap and narrow it, because I want to be on the same. I want to be right where the people are, so that we can do it together. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. In fact, I wrote my notes, and this would be a great quote for all of our listeners to write down, and that is, I don't want them to know me. I want them to feel like I know them. That's what you said. And I thought, how simple is that? But man, if you really put that single sentence through as a filter in all your messages, that I'm not here really for them to get to know me and what I think about this. If they walk away feeling like this person understands me, they know what I'm going through, it changes everything. And I want you to tell them the story. You helped me with this. Because I came to your house and said, look,
I remember this.
The Grow Conference is already, it sells out every year. Everybody loves it. I have my opening message on the first night that it's a grand slam every time.
Totally.
But it can be better, John. I know it can. Intuitively, I knew you could make me better, and I want you to tell them the advice you gave me just this past summer, and how I delivered it differently at the Grow Conference this past year.
This is what you're leading me into right now is a classic on connection right here, because I by the way, I'm at your Grow Conference. I'm on the front row, and every year I learn from you, and I just rejoice of how many pastors you're helping. Tens of thousands of pastors. In fact, I don't know anybody. I don't know anybody that's helping as many pastors as you are. And so I like to be around people that are doing it good. I like to be on a winning team. So if I can be on the front row and amen you and encourage you, I'll be on the front row. But when you came over to the house that day, and said, I want to upgrade my, by the way, you were getting standing ovations on the opening message. So it wasn't like people were walking away and saying, boy, that was a little low. And remember I said, Chris, when they come to that conference, you're bigger than life to them. I mean, those facilities, they've never seen buildings like that. They've never seen programming like that. I mean, they've gone to Disneyland of the church world, and they've never seen it. And there's a huge gap between Chris Hodges, this guy that has planted a church 20 years ago, that has 50, 60, 70,000 everywhere. I mean, there's a world difference between and that guy that's got 200 and just, man, he's just in a rented building hoping. And I said, you got to close the gap. And the way you close the gap, I just encourage. I said, Chris, go back to when you started off in the ministry, and the questions you had, and the doubts that you had, and the things that you did that didn't work, and just let them see you in the beginning. Because can I tell you something? If there's too much distance between the leader and the people, that person doesn't become a leader. After a while, he becomes a martyr. But there's you've got to close the gap. And Chris Of course, you're such a good student. One of the reasons I love pouring into you is if I pour it into you, you're just going to take it and make it bigger than I gave to you. What's beautiful about you is I give it to you as a 5, and you take it and make it a 10. And so that evening, I sat in that front row, and you told story after story of the beginning years. And within 5 minutes, couldn't you tell it, Chris? Within 5 minutes, everybody in the audience, they're just leaning in. Now, why are they leaning in? Because they can identify with you when you started. They can't identify with you where you are today. And you have to find them to lead them. And you found them so good that day. And by far, I felt it was the most effective first message of the Grow Conference because you took time. And it took work for you. Because what happens if you're a grower, it's hard to go back there because you move on. My focus is so forward, I have to work hard on thinking backward. And you had to go back and say, now, how did I feel then? And what did I think then? But you did it masterfully. And the pastors they fell in love with you. What you said, they wrote down. But how you said it went right straight to their heart.
Right.
And you just stole their heart that day because you connected with them where they were, not where you are. And it was I think it's a classic example of how to connect with people. And you did it masterfully. You did it so well.
Well, I have to thank you for how you've mentored me all these years. I think one of the things I wanted the listeners today to hear too is that we never settle. We always, it was good, but it can be better. And having, as you say, a growth mindset instead of a goal mindset. And of course, that's why everybody's listening to this podcast today. And unfortunately, John, we are out of time. We covered 3 of 16 laws. All I can say is, pastors, leaders, business leaders, go get the book. I mean, you want this book, The 16 Laws of Communication. John's written a lot of great books. I promise you this one's going to be at the top of the list. Of course, they're sold everywhere books are sold, on Amazon or wherever you can buy books. Get it today, read it today, maybe even study it as a team. John, I love you. You mean so much to me, and thank you for adding value to me and now adding value to our Grow Leader podcast listeners today. You're the absolute best.
I love you very much, Chris. And anytime I get to do anything with you, it's a blessing because I know it's going to multiply, and this will multiply. So thanks for letting me just be with you, and thank you for all the tens of thousands of people that join you. Thanks for letting me come into your life, and I hope I've added value to you today.
Oh, you absolutely have. All right, thank you, everybody. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much for being with us today, everybody. We want to say a big thank you also to Dr. John Maxwell for being with us, and also to Compassion International, Great American Family, and Wesleyan Investment Foundation for helping make the Grow Leader podcast happen every month. Now, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and to get your show notes for today's episode at growleader.com. We'll see you next time on the Grow Leader podcast.